Apology. And the idea here is that we are not going to apologize to students for working with difficult content or introducing difficult tasks or skills for learning. This is something that I think we naturally um, do, especially if we don't believe that a particular piece of content or strategy or idea is very interesting. If our passion is not there for that particular lesson or idea, we tend to apologize or and communicate that to our students, and a lot of times it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we want to present content, skills, and learning without apology. Doug Liebmov says it this way: embrace rather than apologize for rigorous content, academic challenge, and the hard work necessary to scholarship. So, the biggest thing I think that we apologize for is for content. And we apologize because we assume that something is going to be boring for our students. So, some examples that you might have heard or you might have used if you're like me: guys, I know this isn't very interesting. Let's just try to get through it, right? Like, just do your best. Let's get past this, and then we can get on to the things that matter, right? Or you may not find this all that interesting. This might be boring to you. You might not like this. And what you're doing is you're setting up your students to expect that. But we also have to remember that what is boring to one person may not be to another. Uh, I, for one, am not an accountant. I don't like working with numbers and all of that, but a lot of accountants find it very fascinating, and they want to talk about numbers and different equations and different algorithms and that kind of stuff all day long. It's not passionate for me. However, it is for somebody else. So, what I personally find boring or interesting is not the same as somebody else. Our job is to make what we are teaching engaging. And engaging does not mean fun, exciting, rainbows and glitter. Engaging means that students are interested and they're being a part of the learning experience. So engaging can also mean students struggling to understand. It can mean them asking questions. Engaging just means that our students are working with the content that we have presented to them. We have to figure out a way that we can make it accessible and that we can make it connect to their lives in a meaningful way. And we also have to make sure that we don't assume that students can't appreciate something new or unfamiliar because of their background or their worldview. And we also can't assume that students don't have the skills necessary to do difficult things. We have to come with the assumption that our students are intelligent because they are, that they have grit because they do, and that they are capable of doing some really hard things and learning some hard content, and that has value and meaning for their lives. The other thing that we do is we blame the content. So this might look like, well, this material is on the test, so we'll have to learn it. Or they, whoever they is, say we have to read this. So just, some thoughts there is, if it's on the test and whoever they is, or whatever, there's reasons behind putting it on an exam, on a state test, or putting it into curriculum. So we have to assume, some positive intent there, in the idea that some intelligent people decided that this was important. So it probably is on some level. And again, that goes back to engaging. How can I take in this content or this material and make it meaningful? So boring is just when you don't find meaning in the work that you're doing. So reflect on the rationale instead. We're going to study this because it's an important building block for things you do throughout your life as a student. Right? So really focusing back on the skill and why it's important, or how it can be important for a student with a different worldview. And then the final one is making content, quote unquote, accessible. So making content accessible is preferred when connecting students with rigorous learning experiences. So we may be teaching something difficult, and for me, that was poetry. Poetry was difficult as an English teacher, and so I would usually introduce a lot of poetry with music, and help bring those initial connections to students. What is not good with making content accessible is diluting the content or the standards. So if I just stopped at music lyrics and said, okay, well, that's all they would be interested in, that's all that they're capable of, then I wouldn't be making content accessible. I'd be diluting it and preventing them from having the same standards, the same learning as other students around them. So we don't want to give into our assumptions or stereotypes about what students can and can't do or don't want to do. So here are some examples of how to express that it may not be the most fun situation, or that it may not be easy, but that it's important. So this material is great because it's really challenging. This gets more and more exciting as you come to understand it better. Don't be rattled by this. There are a few fancy words, but once you know them, you'll have this down. This is really tricky, but I haven't seen much you couldn't do if you put your minds to it. It's okay to be confused the first time through this, but we're going to get it. So let's take another try. Okay, so without apology doesn't mean that you don't address that there's difficulties, that it's difficult content. I think that it's important to point that out to students. This is difficult. People struggle with this. There are adults who don't know this. However, it's important, it matters, and so we're going to work through it, and that's what makes it exciting. That's what makes it important. So keep those ideas in mind. If you have any questions or concerns, want to talk more about this, please reach out. I would be happy to talk. Thanks.